Cisco Secure Workload, Firepower Management Center, or Secure Firewall Manager integration, plus Secure Connector. Now this allows us to communicate with an on-premise management platform for Firepower to a secure workload instance that may not be accessible directly, for example, over the internet. Plus data ingest with Firepower Threat Defense. So there's two components here. One is the connection between driving policy on Firepower. That's where FMC integration with Secure Connector come in. And then you have data ingest. So taking flow data from Firepower Threat Defense and using it in Cisco Secure Workload to provide telemetry data that we can run application dependency mapping on. And this is really to drive outcomes where Secure Workload cannot be installed as an agent on the workload itself. Let's get started. Okay, we're going to start off with Firepower Management Center, or Secure Firewall Manager. The bottom left here, you can see SecureX. Now SecureX, the ribbon, follows you around in many of the security technologies offered by Cisco. It's a quick way to threat hunt, incident response, create casebooks, etc. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into objects and we're going to look at external attributes. These are going to be dynamic attributes that are going to be sent from Secure Workload when pushing policy. Now, we're going to come back to this a little bit more later when we actually push policy. But remember, this is agentless. There's no agent. And what we're going to do is build network-based policies at the Firepower level. Now, let's go ahead and create a new base policy here that we're going to leverage. We're going to call this lab clean DMZ policy. Now, this could be anything that you want it to be, and we're going to add a device to it. We can select the default actions, and we can use a base policy here as well. Go ahead and save that out. And you can see it's pretty clean. There's not much here. We'll go ahead and go to users. And now what we're going to do is create a user. In this case, call it whatever you want. CSW API. Put in the password. It needs administrative access. Cisco Secure Workload is going to use this user to modify policy within Firepower Management Center. All right, let's jump over to Secure Workload. We'll go down to Manage. And let's start building some of this out. We'll go to External Orchestrators. Now this is what's going to drive the changes within Firepower. Go ahead and give it a name, put in username and password. We're going to accept self-signed here. This is a lab environment. And we're going to use the Secure Connector tunnel. Why? Because I don't have direct access to FMC from Cisco Secure Workload. Also, you notice that we used merge. We'll go ahead here, and what merge means, we're not going to replace any of the policies. We're going to merge the policies when we deploy. We'll go ahead and put in the hosts, and here you can use domains as well. Now, we'll come back to that in the next section. You can see there's a failure status that's happening here right now. The next piece that we need is the software agent for Secure Connector. Remember, we don't have direct access to Cisco Secure Workload. In fact, this is going over a satellite uplink and talking to RTP where this server is. And it's fairly quick and dynamic in its ability to make changes to the environment, even over that satellite uplink. All right, now that we've gotten the Secure Connector down, we're going to go ahead and we've got a CentOS operating system. We're going to go ahead and deploy the Secure Connector elements. There's an API key that's needed and a secret and the name of the root. We'll go ahead and check out this install. Now I've compiled this just to make it easier, where it actually goes through and does the installation of the client. Then it goes ahead and grabs that token. Once it's got the token, it moves it into the right directory, starts up the services so it's ready to go each time the box is booted, etc. So we'll go ahead and do that install. Everything is looking good here. You can see active running. So I'll put the script in the comments if anybody's interested. Now we should be able to refresh here, and within a short period of time, we should see success here. And look at that. Both of them, we see success. We can jump in here. We can see the status is successfully connected. And so this piece here allows us now to drive policy within Firepower from Cisco Secure Workload, which is pretty neat because now you can enforce policies not only at the agent or workload level, but also at the network level if you wanted to as well. Let's jump over to virtual appliances. We're going to go and enable the Cisco Secure Firewall. And now this is the data ingest piece. So what we want to do here is we want to get flow visibility, we want flow stitching, and the ability to run application dependency mapping to determine what policy should be set within the firewall if this is where we want the control to be. Let's go ahead and download the OVA. And you can see here, it allows us to use it for multiple use cases. It could be AnyConnect, NetFlow, F5, Citrix integration, including Firepower. We'll go ahead and hit next, and we'll go ahead. This is going to be the configuration element of that virtual machine. So we'll go ahead. We need 3 IPs. This allows us to distribute load across multiple interfaces. Obviously, with 3 IPs comes 3 gateways. They're all on the same network. We'll give it a host name, CSW-data ingest. We'll give the name server here. Search domain, cisco.local. We're not using a proxy. We'll go ahead and hit next. We'll download the configuration bundle. Now you can see that takes a little bit of time to download. And it just walks you through the steps there. It gives you full guidance on what you need to do for this installation. So the big thing here is we're going to go ahead and attach the OVA. We'll give this a name, CSW-DI for data ingest, P1 for production 1. We'll put it in the right data store. We'll give it the right mapping for the network. We're going to use thin. The big one is don't power on. Why? Because we have to run that configuration element that we created after we started the download of the OVA. So let's go ahead. Once we get this ready, we go ahead and edit. So the OVA is uploaded. I got to change this reservation here. I would leave the defaults. I wouldn't make any changes here. The network adapters, everything looks good as set. We'll go ahead, and now what we need to do is grab that configuration file that we created. Now, let's go ahead and upload that file. And you can see there it is there. It's uploaded. Select. Make sure that we connect the ISO and we power it on. So that's the big trick here. You just got to make sure that you're going to deploy the configuration file as this boots up. Once the OVA boots up, it'll go ahead and run that configuration file, set everything up, and you are good to go. So a couple of elements here. The Firepower Management Center, because Cisco Secure Workload is remote, we need a secure connector to allow that communication and change of policy. And the other piece is the data ingest element that allows us to take flow data from Firepower and ingest it and use it within Secure Workload. So let's go ahead and refresh here. We should see that it's active. No connectors enabled just yet, but it is active. Let's go ahead and enable connector. Nothing's active, but let's look at info, VM, NTP, log, alert, and troubleshooting. So we can enable a couple things here if we need to, whether that be logging or troubleshooting. So we can do it from here and we can enable it. Let's go ahead and enable the Secure Firewall connector. So look at that. It's ready to go. Again, we can look at log, alert, and troubleshooting. But we're done. This is all we need to make this connection from Cisco Secure Workload to securely connect to that remote Firepower Management Center, push policy. And the next piece that we need to do is just set up NetFlow to send flow data from Firepower Threat Defense to that data ingest appliance that we just created. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an access rule here. Give it a name. Disable logging, extended allow, any looks pretty good. I want to capture everything here. We're not doing any filtering. And there we go, CSW_flow. Now we're going to go to flex config to build out the netflow elements that are required to send the flow data or metadata from Firepower Threat Defense to that data ingest appliance. And again, this is going to allow us to run application dependency mapping to determine what is communicating through that firewall. And based on that, it's going to give us suggestions on the policies that need to be deployed. We have an opportunity to tweak those policies and then push those policies. We're going to go ahead and create a couple of text objects here. So let's look at the defaults. And you can see there's parameters, event types, and destinations. We're going to go ahead and add a text object. We'll give it a name. We're going to do CSW event_type. And here we're going to say all. And this is a variable that we're going to be able to use. So this is all going to come together shortly. So bear with me. We're going to create these objects and we're going to use them elsewhere. All right, so that's the first one. Let's go ahead and create another one here. This is going to be CSW NSEL destination. And this is going to be multiple variable types. So the first one's going to be outside 192.168.255.233, and then our port 4729. That's the data ingest appliance that we deployed. Now, you might not use outside. You might use a different interface. That's just the way this lab environment's set up for me. And we're not going to touch the netflow parameters. We'll just use that as is. So let's go ahead and CSW. You can see we've got the two text objects that are created. One is event type of all, and the other is the destination, the details around the destination. Now let's jump to flex config. We'll go ahead and check out the defaults. And you can see they've got a few that are here. Let's go ahead and copy the parameters one. And we'll go ahead and clean this up a little bit with the name. We're going to deploy this only once. And we're going to save this out. So we didn't make any changes here. We used the defaults other than we've created the flex config object that's referencing the default text object. Okay, let's go ahead and create another one here. And this time we're going to focus on creating a brand new one from scratch so you can see it from start to finish. And we'll go ahead and give this a name. This is going to be CSW_NSEL_class map. Now we'll go ahead and create this class map CSW_flow. And we'll match access list. And we'll go ahead and insert policy object, extended ACL. We'll grab our ACL that we created, but first we'll give it a name. Save that out. And now, because it's referencing a variable, any changes that we make to the ACL obviously already apply here. Okay, let's go ahead and create the policy map. It is global. And we'll go ahead and set the class here, CSW_flow. And we'll insert policy object, text object this time. And we'll go ahead and look for our event type here. Go ahead and add it over. I'll get rid of this S here, and we'll just save it out. Okay, so far so good. But this actually should be flow export the variable, so the event type itself. If you look down here, you can see the property name details as well. And this is where we're going to use because we have 3 elements that we can choose from, we want to first the event type get, and then we're using variable 0. The destination now, again, we're going to insert text object. And we're going to call this CSW underscore NSEL underscore destination. We'll add that over again, that text object that we created. Now we're going to have to come back and fix this because we don't need to use the get parameter for event type, but you'll see that shortly. We'll see that. We'll go through, you'll see the mistake made, and we'll come back and make the modifications. Now, the destination does have multiple variables. So in this case, we're going to use 1 here, which is the IP, and we're going to deploy this every time. All right, one more to do here. We'll give this a name. It's CSW NSEL underscore flow underscore destination. And we'll go flow dash export destination text object NSEL destination. Give this a name, CSW underscore NSEL. Just keeping them the same here. Go ahead and save. And this is get 0. So this will get the outside element of that text object that we created. And we'll go ahead and you can type it in. You don't have to go through the GUI to drive this either. Now we're going to grab the IP address. And then we're going to go ahead and use the variable again. And this time we are going to get the port. So outside IP address and port number. And we're going to deploy this once. And we'll go ahead and save. All right, there's our objects. We can go ahead and look at CSW here real quick, and you can see the class map, the flow destination, and the parameters. The next step here is, let's go ahead and go to Flex Config. We'll create a new policy, and now we'll pull this all together and we'll push this out to the device, and we're done. That's all we need to do to drive policy from Cisco Secure Workload. And not just policy, but drive it based on how the asset, in this case Firepower, is being leveraged. We'll save this out. And it's letting us know that we've already got a previously assigned. Do you really want to do this? In our case, yes. And you can see our 3 user-defined Flex Config objects. We're going to use the class map, the flow destination, and the parameters. Now, a nice little capability here is the ability to preview the config before you push it. So if there's any issues here, you're going to be able to go back and make your changes before you deploy. So let's look through there. We saw the ACL. And let's keep going down. We've got some objects. Scroll down. Okay, so there's our issue right here. You can see that that hasn't been translated properly. So let's go ahead and go back to the object. Let's go to flex config. Let's go to text object. And we're going to have to look at the event type is all. And so that's not an issue. What the issue is within the flex config object. Because we're using the parameter and there's only one, you don't need to use the get piece. So let's go ahead and get rid of the get. And in fact, I missed another piece. It should be flow-export event-type, then the rest of it that you've seen up to this point. So make sure that you make that change. I ended up pushing and found out, oh wait, I did make that mistake. All right, so let's go ahead and edit, and we'll go ahead and preview the flex config object just before we push it. And let's make sure at the bottom here, we don't see that event type issue that we saw earlier. Exactly. And I call it out here because if I would have made the change in the config originally, it would have been made here as well with the event-type. Okay, we're good to go. As long as you did the fixes that I've shown here, that based on the mistakes that I introduced, one, to show you, and then two, I got caught because I missed one thing. Okay, let's go ahead and push policy. This will take a minute. All right, let's jump into Cisco Secure Workload real quick here. Once this deploys, we're good to go. Manage virtual appliances, data ingest. If we see this, go ahead and click it. And now we see NetFlow version 9, the IP address, the port number, UDP, it's listening, and data starting to come in. We'll see it come to fruition by analyzing the flow data that we get from Firepower Threat Defense to build policy.